In the quiet town of Maple Hollow, a place where autumn leaves crunched underfoot and the rain often fell like whispers on rooftops, there lived a woman named Evelyn Carter. Maple Hollow was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, where porch lights glowed warmly at dusk, and where secrets rarely stayed buried. But sometimes they did, at least for a while. Evelyn had lived in the same pale blue Victorian house on Birch Street for over 30 years. She worked at the local library and was known for her quiet demeanor, always carrying a canvas bag filled with books and wearing a scarf no matter the season. Children liked her because she always had peppermints in her pocket, and adults respected her because she listened more than she spoke. But what the townspeople didn't know was that Evelyn harbored a memory so disturbing it had nearly driven her to madness. It wasn't something she spoke about. Not to her neighbors. Not to her coworkers. Not even to herself, at least not out loud. It all began in 1987. Back then, Evelyn was a young mother raising two children, a curious 10-year-old named Thomas and a quiet 7-year-old daughter named Lily. Her husband, Mark, was a carpenter, often gone for long hours building houses in the nearby county. They were, by all accounts, a typical family. Their house smelled of cinnamon and old wood, and there was always a pot of tea steeping on the stove. Then came the storm. It was a night much like this one, heavy rain tapping on the windows, distant thunder rolling across the hills. Evelyn had tucked the children into bed, kissed their foreheads, and sat down to read in the living room. The power had flickered a few times, and eventually it gave out. She lit a few candles and waited. Mark hadn't come home yet, which wasn't unusual. But it was getting late. Sometime after midnight, Evelyn heard a knock at the door. A slow, deliberate knock. Thinking it was Mark, she opened the door without hesitation. But it wasn't her husband. Standing in the rain was a man she didn't recognize. He wore a soaked denim jacket, and his hair was plastered to his forehead. He looked young, no older than 20. His eyes darted around like a trapped animal's. "Car broke down," he said. "Can I use your phone?" Evelyn hesitated. Something about him felt off. But the mother in her, the part that wanted to believe people were good, overrode her instincts. She let him in. He used the phone and thanked her, claiming a tow truck would come in 30 minutes. Evelyn offered him tea, and they sat in silence while the wind howled outside. He told her his name was Daniel, that he'd been visiting a friend in a nearby town. He spoke softly, almost too softly. Evelyn felt the hairs on her neck rise. When she excused herself to check on the children, she found Lily fast asleep. But Thomas wasn't in his bed. She searched the house, calling his name. That's when she saw the back door, ajar. Rain blew in through the crack. She turned, heart racing, and found Daniel standing in the hallway, staring at her. "You shouldn't have opened the door," he whispered. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She ran for the nearest phone, only to find the line was dead. In her panic, she grabbed the kitchen knife. Daniel just stood there, watching. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," he said. "But I can't let you stop me now." Before she could scream, headlights flashed through the window. A car was pulling up, Mark's truck. Daniel bolted out the back door. Mark ran inside seconds later, soaked and frantic. Evelyn fell into his arms, sobbing. They found Thomas moments later, hiding in the tool shed behind the house. He said Daniel had coaxed him outside, saying his mom needed help with something. But Thomas had seen the glint of something in Daniel's pocket, a knife, and ran. The police came, and an all-points bulletin went out for Daniel Green. It turned out that wasn't his real name. He was wanted for a string of home invasions across the state. In one, a homeowner had been seriously injured. But Daniel had vanished into the woods beyond Maple Hollow and was never seen again. Years passed. The incident faded into local legend. People whispered about the rain stranger who knocked on doors during storms. Evelyn and Mark did their best to move on. They never spoke of that night again. Thomas grew up to become a teacher. Lily moved across the country and rarely came back to town. But Evelyn never forgot. Decades later, she was alone in the house once more. Mark had passed from cancer. The kids had their own lives. And Evelyn still kept the same routines, tea at 8 p.m., scarf around her neck, and a paperback in her lap. But every time it rained, She checked all the locks twice. One night, during a late October storm, Evelyn sat by the window, watching the wind blow leaves in swirling spirals. The rain pattered against the glass, steady and hypnotic. She almost didn't hear the knock. 3 slow knocks. She froze. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then again, 3 more knocks. The same rhythm. The same deliberate pause between each one. She reached for her phone with trembling hands, but the line was dead. Her heart thudded in her chest. Slowly, she crept to the door. Through the peephole, there was nothing but darkness. But she swore she saw movement, a shadow peeling away from the front porch. She called the police, and they arrived quickly. They searched the property and found nothing. No footprints. No tire tracks. Just the rain, washing everything away. But tucked under the doormat was a slip of paper. In neat handwriting it read, "You shouldn't have opened the door." The officer took it as evidence. They promised to patrol the area more often. But nothing else happened. Evelyn tried to go back to normal, but something had shifted. The sense of safety she'd rebuilt after all those years had vanished. She started sleeping with the lights on. She rarely left the house. And always, when it rained, she waited for the knock. 6 months later, a man was arrested 2 towns over. He'd broken into a farmhouse during a storm and was caught rummaging through the kitchen. When the police questioned him, he said he'd been looking for something. "A woman," he said. "I met her years ago. She let me in." They didn't connect the dots until later. He matched the description from the old case. Same eyes. Same quiet voice. Same soaked denim jacket. But his fingerprints didn't match anything on file. He gave a different name. This time it was Peter Lane. The authorities began to wonder. Had he done this before? Was he targeting specific homes? Or just choosing them at random? When Evelyn was shown a photo of him, she paled. It was him. No question. But he looked exactly the same. Not older. Not younger. Just the same. Experts chalked it up to memory tricks, trauma doing strange things to the mind. But Evelyn knew better. She stopped answering the door altogether. Eventually, she moved to an assisted living facility. The house sat empty for years until it was sold to a young couple who were new to the area. They didn't know the story. The first storm of the season rolled in the following spring. The rain was steady, soft against the windows. And sometime after midnight, the new homeowners were woken by a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. They checked the cameras, nothing. They checked the peephole, no one. But on the front porch, under the mat, was a slip of paper. "You shouldn't have opened the door." They moved out a month later.